Ahoy there! Welcome to Ships in Brief. Today we'll be talking about the IJN Asashio, probably my favorite destroyer in the game right now. Unhappy with the Shiratsuyu class destroyer, the Japanese decided to allow the London Naval Treaty to expire. Therefore, they were able to create the larger, faster, stronger, and more heavily armed Asashio class, of which 10 were built. Unfortunately, not a single one of them survived to the end of the war. In addition to being larger, faster, and otherwise more capable than the preceding Shiratsuyu class, the Asashio class boasted being the first Japanese destroyer equipped with sonar. While each of the 10 Asashio class destroyers was lost before the end of the war, each one of them took part in several campaigns in the Pacific Theater. The Asashio herself took part in such battles as the Battle of Badung Strait, the Battle of Midway, the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, and the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, where she was lost with some 200 men after an Allied air attack. Other notable ships of the Asashio class include Kasumi, who served as an escort during the attack on Pearl Harbor. The destroyers Michishio, Asagumo, and Yamagumo were lost in the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Sometime between 1943 and 1944, the exposition turret was removed and replaced with additional anti-aircraft guns and 4 depth-charge launchers. Later on down the road, additional anti-aircraft guns were added, and the last 4 surviving Asashio destroyers were also fitted with Type 13 and Type 22 radar. Okay, so let's take a look at how the Asashio appears in-game. Asashio has 15,100 base hit points, with a low-end armor of 13mm and a higher-end armor of 20mm of thickness. She has a base top speed of 35 knots. She has 3 dual 127mm cannons which can fire both HE and AP. They have a stock reload of 7.05 seconds and a rotation speed of 6.9 degrees per second, and a base range of 10.9 kilometers. She has 2 centerline quad-tube torpedo launchers, with a reload time of 112 seconds, a maximum range of 20 kilometers, and a speed of 67 knots. These are massively damaging torpedoes, but they are deep-water torpedoes and can only hit battleships and aircraft carriers. She has laughable anti-aircraft armaments, however her concealment can be brought down with the proper skills and upgrades to 5.4, which is among the best in the game. As the Asashio class destroyer was the immediate predecessor to the Kagero class destroyer for the Japanese Navy, the Asashio and the Kagero play in World Warships very similarly. The primary difference is the available targets per ship type. The Kagero can attack anything with its torpedoes, while the Asashio cannot. The Asashio carries pretty standard torpedo boat consumables: damage control party, smoke generator, speed booster, and, as with some of the better Japanese ships, the torpedo reload booster. This is absolutely a stealth boat, so you want to play it as such. Generally speaking, the upgrades that you want to see are Main Armaments Mod 1, Propulsion Modification 1, Aiming Systems Mod 1, Propulsion Mod 2, and Concealment Systems Modification. You really want to make sure that you have that and Concealment Expert at the same time in order to play Asashio properly. Other optimal captain skills include Priority Target, Last Stand, Torpedo Acceleration, Torpedo Armament Expertise, Survivability Expert, and of course, Concealment Expert. You want to do everything you can to boost the torpedo power and the sneaky ninja-ness of the Asashio. This is not a gunboat. You do not want to get into gunfights with other destroyers, although the Alpha Strike of the HE and the AP is pretty decent against wounded enemies. And even with the range reduction offered by torpedo acceleration, these torpedoes still go 16 kilometers, and they go much faster. The Asashio, from the ground floor up, is the absolute bane of capital ships. I love the Asashio. So let's see how the Asashio behaves in action. The first thing that I'd like to demonstrate is the usefulness of the torpedoes. Now again, these torpedoes are deep water torpedoes, and they can only hit battleships and carriers, so they're not of any use whatsoever if you're going against cruisers or destroyers, both of which can usually pretty handily take the Asashio out. So you're not going to be capping with her very often, at least not in the early game. So these torpedoes are pretty much fire and forget. And as they are very fast to begin with and only have a 0.9 kilometer detection range, when you add the additional speed from my torpedo acceleration captain skill, which does drop it down to 16 kilometers, it makes them very, very fast. So a battleship like the one which we just fired these torpedoes at, who is at a dead stop when I fire them, he pretty much has no chance to get out of the way. None whatsoever. And when they hit hard, as you shall see here. Rest in peace, man. Now this gameplay footage that I'm showing you right now is sped up to 3 times speed so as to save some time. We had a 3-2 destroyer advantage in this game, and being the odd man out with the best concealment of all the destroyers on my side, I decided I would take that opportunity to just sneak around and harass them as often as possible. The Asashio is a torpedo boat, and unfortunately, because it can only attack half of the enemy ships available, it's mostly really best used as a spotter and target of opportunity hitter. Now, a lot of people don't like watching the Asashio join their team because it does have kind of a negative connotation when it can only attack things. It's a one-trick pony. It really is. The positive side to it is that when it does get the drop on these battleships and aircraft carriers, it can delete them off the board. It is really a one-trick pony. But once you come down to only cruisers and destroyers or what have you, it's pretty useless, except as a spotter and an occasional harasser. But again, in this game, because we had the destroyer advantage, I decided I was going to sneak up the middle here and see if I could do a little bit of spotting and a little bit of harassing before anybody else was the wiser. Since they don't have but the 2 destroyers, I figured that they probably weren't going to send one down the middle, so I figured I'd pop up. I wasn't going to go through, I wasn't going to try to cap, and in fact my goal was never to even breach that circle to get into their home cap, because I didn't want them to know I was there for as long as possible. Now, of course, they had a couple of guys posted near the entrance, which was wise on their part, but I still managed to knock almost 70,000 damage with just a couple of salvos, just a couple of torpedo salvos. And at this point, with one of their destroyers already being dead, I figured I'd be able to just absolutely feast on their big heavies. And that would have been the case, except that when I started to move up, I started to overextend myself a little bit. This was a mistake on my part. I should have continued to play a little bit more cautiously, at least for a little bit. Ultimately, what got me, though, wasn't my overextending. What got me was the poor turning radius of the Japanese destroyers. This is something that is endemic to the line. It's not as bad as, like, say, some of the Russians, but it's hard to... It's hard to turn on a dime, and that was my downfall here. Now you'll notice again, I set up to fire my torpedoes at that battleship that was pretty much stationary, and if you're firing torpedoes at a pretty much stationary target, there's almost no chance that they're going to escape unless they're completely at range. See, now this is where I should have slowed down and hit hard to starboard almost immediately, and I didn't, and I paid for it. But even with that mistake, I did alright damage-wise. So the Asashio is a one-trick pony, and it's one that I am very fond of personally. I like torpedo boats better than gunboats, and there are a lot of people who don't like seeing an Asashio on their team, but a good Asashio player can do really good things for their team. Primarily by keeping most things lit up and spotted for the entire match, particularly if they can manage to get their way past that initial picket line of surveying ships. If there's not a whole lot of radar on the map, then this thing is absolutely invaluable. Alternatives include the Harikaze and the Kagero, both of which are fairly good ships. The Harikaze is probably a bit more versatile, but it doesn't have that absolute overpowering ability that the Asashio has against carriers and battleships. Now personally, I love this ship. I think it's great fun. I love it, and I think you should too. Thanks for joining me here on Ships in Brief. Join me again next time as I profile yet another ship in brief. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I think you might enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, go ahead and take a look at my previous video, where you can take a look at some of my archived Twitch streams. You can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/chiefbones. Anyway, have a good one, yeah?